Hello, welcome to Culture TV and to Advanced Russian. Today we're launching a new series of videos in which we'll be watching and discussing the Soviet cartoon Трое из Простоквашино. This is the first episode. Now there are already a couple of videos about the more modern cartoon Смешарики on our channel. Do take a look at those as well. Whereas this one here is, well, almost half a century old, but is nevertheless an absolute classic, and most Russians will have definitely watched this when they were younger. The new Russian generation is now watching the sequel to Трое из Простоквашино, the more modern version, which was released a few years ago. But we're going to be watching the one from the Soviet times. So, this is how it's going to work. We're going to watch the cartoon, not in its entirety all at once, but rather in small chunks. And periodically throughout, I will be pausing the video to talk about some interesting points on the language and grammar used, and maybe even some cultural elements that are conveyed in the plot as well. If there's anything that I have missed out and you're curious about, then you're more than welcome to ask in the comments below or by email. Alright then, if you're ready, let's start.
Неправильно ты, дядя Фёдор, бутерброд ешь.
So I'd just like to briefly mention the use of word order here. Неправильно, which normally means incorrectly, but in this case is better translated as not properly, so not in the right way, has purposely been placed at the start of the sentence because it is the focus. It is what is being emphasized. Of course, the tone also makes this clear, but I hope that you can see, or you might already be familiar with this, that word order in Russian can play a role in conveying the speaker's emotions, whilst also not changing the meaning of the sentence at all. And then the word Butterbrot actually comes from the German Butterbrot, which means buttered bread. Notice how there is only one slice of bread. But nowadays in Russia, it's actually not unusual to hear the English loanword sandwich being used as well. Okay, let's carry on.
Ты его колбасой кверху держишь, а надо колбасой на язык класть.
So, колбаса is quite an interesting foodstuff that you don't really find in Western countries. It is sort of similar to ham and sausages as well, but it is still quite unique. It's something that you really only find in Russia and Eastern Europe. In Soviet times, it was almost seen as a delicacy in some places, whereas now you can find it in any supermarket. And indeed, it is commonly eaten on a sandwich. And there are so many different varieties of it. Sometimes колбаса can be smoked. In Russia, it is common to find колбаса that is boiled, the most famous one being докторская колбаса, which looks something like this. Again, this is something quite unusual for people living in Western countries, but in Russia, this is something very common. It is added, as I say, onto a piece of bread to make a sandwich. It's added into salads and even into some soups. So yes, there we go, колбаса.
Так вкуснее получится.
We'll talk about получится and its imperfective equivalent получается in much more detail in later videos, but for now you can think of this as it will become or it will turn out to be.
А откуда ты знаешь, что меня дядей Фёдором зовут?
In Russian, you normally say, from where do you know? Откуда, rather than how do you know, as we do in English.
Я в нашем доме всех знаю. Я на чердаке живу, и мне все видно.
So here I'd like to quickly discuss the use of the dative case. You may be aware that it is used when expressing certain emotions or states of being. For example, мне жарко, I'm warm. Мне холодно, I'm cold. Мне грустно, I'm sad. But as you can see here, this can be extended to more general ideas, like visibility. Now there is almost no difference between я все вижу and мне все видно. These are absolutely synonymous, almost identical phrases. It's just that the latter has a very subtle suggestion or notion of this being temporary or because of the state of the surroundings, the position in which the cat is in. It is the fact that he is above in the attic that gives him a good view and enables him to see everything, and not really because he has, I don't know, a particularly good eyesight or something like that. It's a similar idea with mnie żarko and all of those phrases. It's not that you're hot permanently. You feel warm at that particular moment because of the environment, because of the surroundings and temporary conditions around you. Now, this is all very subtle and involuted, I understand, and you're not at all expected to be familiar with this detail, even at advanced level, but I thought I'd mention it just in case any of you were wondering.
Кот Матроскин меня зовут, это фамилия такой. Только сейчас мой чердак ремонтируют, и мне жить негде.
Pay attention to негде here. We have a letter ye, and the stress is on that first syllable. So this is different to nigdzie, which, yes, also means nowhere, but it is used differently. So we have негде and nigdzie, two different words. Now these prefixes ni and nie are also used with some of the other indefinite pronouns. For example, никогда, некогда, никому, некому, and so on. Now we'll talk about the difference between them formally in a separate video, but for now you can think of the version with nie being used to show the complete absence of a possibility of an action happening. Compare я нигде не живу with мне негде жить. The first option, я нигде не живу, means I don't live anywhere. This is not to say that you can't possibly live anywhere, or at least this is not implied. You might have just made the decision not to live anywhere. You've just said, right, I'm not going to live anywhere. Or similarly, я нигде не работаю. I don't work anywhere. There are also no implications here. You're simply stating the fact that you are not employed anywhere. Whereas if you say мне негде жить or мне негде работать, it means that there is no such place for you to live or to work. So you physically can't be living anywhere. This is sort of beyond your control, if you like. A place for living, a home, does not exist, so you can't possibly be living anywhere. Notice also that we're using the dative case. Мне негде жить. And in fact, we're sort of doing this in English as well. There is no place for me to live. Yes? Now, I've exaggerated this slightly here to make it a bit clearer for you, but at the same time, please don't worry about this too much for now. Again, this is a very advanced concept.
Дядь Федор, а у тебя только один неправильный бутерброд был?
Дома еще есть. Хочешь? Пошли ко мне жить.
Now you may know about this already, but if not, then you can bear in mind that in Russian you can use пошли along with a verb in the imperfective or occasionally a conjugated verb in the perfective, also in the plural form, to propose, suggest, or maybe invite someone to do something. So пошли plus a verb in the imperfective, or пошли plus a conjugated verb in the perfective in the plural form. So, for example, пошли в кино. How about we go to the cinema? Пошли гулять. Let's go for a walk. Пошли побегаем. Let's go for a run. Let's go running. Пошли посмотрим новый фильм. Пошли посмотрим новый фильм. Why don't we go and watch the new film? Now, yes, this is quite odd and it doesn't really have any grammatical logic behind it, but nevertheless, you can hear this in Russian quite a lot, in spoken Russian particularly.
Меня мама твоя прогонит.
Ничего не прогонит.
The verb pair прогонять, прогнать mean to kick out, to expel, or maybe to get rid of, or in this case it's more like to banish someone. Now here's another interesting nuance of spoken Russian. Ничего can be used along with the negation, не, to strengthen it, to emphasize the negation. Yes, of course, normally if we're saying nothing in Russian, then we will have не and ничего together because we have the double negative system. But sometimes when grammar would tell us otherwise, that you can't use ничего here, Russians actually use it to strengthen the negation. So in other words, it means something like something definitely won't happen. And I have to say that this is particularly used to reassure people. So let me show you what I mean. Suppose two children are playing around the house and all of a sudden they break something. And then one of them starts worrying about their mum telling them off, scolding them. And they say, "Она меня наругает." She's going to tell me off, she's going to punish me. And the other one says, "Oh, ничего не наругает." Oh no, she won't. That definitely won't happen. Don't worry about it. Or maybe here's another example. Maybe somebody is really worried about the future, what's going to happen in this world, and they say, the situation is going to worsen. Всё ухудшится. And the other person says, "Oh, ничего не ухудшится." Oh no, nothing will worsen. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry. And although in English I'm translating this as nothing will worsen, that's not really what it means in Russian. It's more like worsening won't happen. A deterioration, a retrogress definitely won't happen. For sure it won't happen. That sort of thing. Now this is quite confusing, I understand. So once again, don't worry about it if you don't understand. This is all very advanced.
Может, папа заступится?
Что-то у нас кошачьим духом пахнет.
Что-то here means something along the lines of for some reason, or it appears that, or it looks like. And I'd also like to mention to you the ease of forming adjectives in Russian from nouns. This is something that is often quite difficult in English. In Russian you can take the word cat, for example, кот, and then you can turn it into an adjective that essentially means anything to do with cats. Other examples include собака, a dog, and in the adjective form that will become собачий. Птица, a bird, птичий, an adjective that means, well, bird. I don't even know how we would say it in English. To do with birds, or of birds, something like that. And of course this is not restricted to just animals, these are just some examples. And then duch in this particular case means smell or scent, but normally its meaning is something like spirit. So for example, the evil spirit in Russian is zlой дух.
Не иначе, как дядя Федор кота притащил.
Не иначе как literally means not otherwise how. So I think the better translation in English would be the only explanation for this is something. The only possibility is. This can only be because. So it is smelling of cats in the house for the only reason, for the only possible explanation that Uncle Fyodor has brought a cat home. And by the way, if you're wondering, I have no idea why he's called an uncle. This is clearly a young lad who can't possibly be an uncle, so it's just a name really, I guess. Притащить means to drag in, тащить on its own meaning to drag, and often this means that you're carrying something quite heavy, right? And you know this actually has some slight negative connotations. Perhaps you're carrying something that you're not supposed to be carrying, so maybe you've stolen something. Or maybe it's just the idea that others around you are jealous of whatever it is that you're carrying.
Ну и что? Один кот нам не помешает.
Ну, тебе не помешает, а мне помешает.
Мешать means to disturb, to be inconvenient, or to be causing problems. But in the construction не помешает, we really mean something is going to be useful or it's not going to do any harm.
Но ты сам подумай, какая от этого кота польза?
Ну, почему обязательно польза? Какая, например, польза от этой картинности?
От этой картинности очень большая польза. Она дырку на обоих загораживает.
Ну и что? И от кота будет польза. Он мышей ловить может.
У нас нет мышей.
А мы заведем.
The verb pair заводить, завести has quite a few meanings, but in this case it's something like to acquire, to get yourself something, to buy yourself something, to maybe even get yourself a gift, make yourself a present, or possibly to start having something. So often in Russian, when you talk about pets, if you want to get a new pet, then you will use this verb.
Ну, если тебе этот кот так важен, пожалуйста, выбирай. Или он, или я.
Ну, о. Ну, я тебя выбираю. Я с тобой уже давно знаком. А этого кота первый раз вижу.
Дорогие мои родители, папа и мама, я вас очень люблю, но и зверей я тоже люблю.
Но и. But and. What possibly could this mean? Well, most of the time we would translate this actually as equally or at the same time or but also. So I love not only you, my parents, but also animals.
Особенно всяких кошек.
Всякие is used very commonly, particularly in spoken Russian, and it means all sorts of.
Да, а вы не разрешаете мне их заводить. Поэтому я уезжаю в деревню и буду там жить. Ваш сын, дядя Федор.
И кот.
Alright, so we'll stop there for now. We'll find out about the developments of this escape next time in the next episode, but that's it for today. If you have any questions or comments, please let us know below. Equally, if you have any feedback about this style of videos, then also do let us know your thoughts. Thank you very much for your attention. See you next time. Goodbye.